So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy Ellen. I'm back. And man, we about to get into some more, I guess, river monsters maybe. I mean, this video is what they captured in a river shocked the world #2. All right, so if you're new to the channel, man, hit that subscribe button, join the fam, and let's see some craziness. Yeah.
Longtime Missing File subscribers may remember our video on the most disturbing discoveries made in rivers and swamps.
1, 2, 3!
Yo, was that a... No, I thought that was a gator in there, bro. I was about to lose it. You just grab anything out of net.
1, 2, 3!
With over 150 rivers in the world and with more than 5% of the Earth's surface covered by swamps, settling on just 15 discoveries was an impossible task. So we've decided to revisit the topic in today's video. Here are 15 more of the most terrifying things found in rivers and swamps. Jumbo jet. A fuselage is the primary part of an airplane and is where passengers and crew sit during a flight. The fuselage does not include the actual wings of the plane. Because wings are considered separate components, a fuselage cannot be transported by flight unless it's carried by a much larger aircraft, which can prove extremely expensive. For this reason, aircraft manufacturers typically have their fuselages carried to their construction warehouse by train, where the wings and other components are added later. Trains have transported them for more than 100 years, so you'd think all the kinks would have been figured out by now. But as one Montana rail link driver recently learned, this is far from the case. This driver was tasked with transporting 6 Boeing 737 fuselages from Montana all the way to a factory in the state of Washington. But before the driver could even get out of his home state, his train derailed just over the Clark Fork River. Thankfully, the driver managed to escape without injury, but half of his cargo had come undone and fell into the river below. As you can see in this image, they were later discovered on an embankment of the Clark Fork River with 2 of...
Somebody is pissed, bro. Did you see that? Yeah, that's a lot of money in that river.
They were later discovered on an embankment of the Clark Fork River with 2 of them almost entirely submerged in the water. Montana Rail Link faced the unenviable challenge of recovering them from the river, which it struggled with owing to the fact that it had never encountered such a problem before. In the end, it took the rail company 5 days to remove all 3, which were then crushed and cubed by a Montana recycling firm. Hey, did you know that if you smash the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell, you're more likely to win the lottery? So what are you waiting for? Sneaky croc. Alligators have been roaming the swamps of North America for 84 million years. The species certainly hasn't grown meek in its old age. If anything, the modern alligator has evolved to become stronger, larger, and even more ferocious than its ancestors. And if the following video is anything to go by, it's also become extremely intelligent. This video was recorded in a Louisiana swamp.
Great, that's what we need. Extremely intelligent alligators, bro. That's what we need. Some of the most deadliest creatures on the planet. Now I want to be one of the oh my gosh, that is not what we need.
Which really shouldn't come as any surprise given the fact that the Bayou State is home to more than 2 million alligators.
Yes.
But despite the state's massive alligator population, the creature is conspicuous by its absence at the beginning of this recording. For the first couple of seconds of the video, all we can see are the shrubs and lily pads that cover the swamp water. Then in the distance, we discover a pair of eyes so intense that they look as though they could light all of the surrounding vegetation on fire, presumably believing it's a...
And he can jump up there. I don't know why they don't. It ain't like they can't. I feel as though they can get up there.
To be perfectly camouflaged, the alligator swims right up to the edge of the water where the camera holder and their friends are standing. Obviously, the group is too smart to get too close to this beast, but that doesn't stop it from opening its mouth in anticipation. Seeing the alligator's sharp teeth on display, we don't even want to think about what might have happened had the group not seen the monstrous creature and decided to venture into the water. Abandoned swamp bus. Sometimes a driver makes the risky decision to take their vehicle off-road and journey into an unforgiving environment. This almost always ends in disaster, as the vehicle becomes trapped in mud or water and the driver has no choice but to abandon it. That may well explain the origins of this school bus, which was recently found in a Florida swamp, but it certainly doesn't solve the mystery of why it was there in the first place. Internet sleuths have been obsessing over this abandoned swamp bus ever since it was discovered. Eagle-eyed researchers have used the vehicle's registration plate to identify it as a 1988 Chevy model, while others have managed to trace it back to the Flambeau School District in Wisconsin. Some particularly dedicated investigators have even traveled to Florida to examine the bus up close. They discovered that the bus had been converted into a camper van, but it remains unclear exactly when these changes happened. Some have speculated that the bus was converted into a camper van only after it was discarded in the swamp, possibly by a homeless person who discovered the vehicle and decided to make it their home. Then there are those who believe the bus was renovated by a well-meaning handyman who had intended to use it to travel the United States, which would explain how the vehicle got from Wisconsin to a state more than 1,300 miles away. What do you guys think? Is this abandoned school bus simply the victim of swamp exploration gone wrong? Or is it the result of something more sinister? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Toxic sludge. The Romanian village of Jimana was once one of the most scenic and picturesque locations in all of Europe. Surrounded by trees and mountains, Jimana was rich in natural beauty, which is what inspired so many Romanians to abandon life in the country's bustling cities and settle down in the idyllic village. Life there was calm and easygoing, with most residents earning a living through their crafts and trades. In 1978, however, a copper mine was opened in a nearby area, which produced almost as much toxic waste as it did copper. The large quantities of harmful substances that were suddenly being created needed somewhere to be disposed of, and dictator Nicolae Ceausescu chose Jimana to be that somewhere. In his eyes, the fact that this village was located in a deep valley made it the perfect place to store the copper mine's toxic waste, and so Jimana was evacuated and subsequently flooded with water. Immediately following this, the newly minted lake became a dumping ground for hazardous materials, which are present in its waters to this day. The remains can also be found in the lake, and the steeple of the village church is clearly visible, protruding from the toxic waste that brought its glory days to a premature end. Giant python. The python is arguably the most terrifying snake in the world. In fact, we're gonna go so far as to say this scaly scoundrel has a legitimate claim to the title of most terrifying animal on the entire planet. While the python is not venomous, it squeezes the life out of other living creatures by wrapping itself.
Yeah, the venomous ones are more scary to me. I ain't gonna say the python don't rank up there, because if it squeezes you, you're done, but it'd be the venomous ones that I'd be mainly worried about.
Around the body of its prey and suffocating it with its massive frame. And we certainly aren't guilty of hyperbole when we say massive. An adult python can come.
Sheesh. Y'all walk up on a tree and you see this. What are y'all doing? Like, I'm running. I'm not stopping. I'm not trying to figure out what it's doing there. No, he's minding his business. I'm gonna keep minding mine.
Men at 23 feet in length and can weigh as much as 350 pounds. The python featured in this next piece of footage not only meets those numbers, but also seems to well exceed them. According to the person who uploaded this video, this python has been causing a lot of trouble in the nearby area by attacking locals and attempting to snatch younger members of the community. With a camera and some of their village's strongest men, the uploader set out in search of the giant python, eventually finding it asleep in a towering tree. In the resulting video, the men climb the tree and attempt to decoil the snake, but the rabid reptile won't give up without a fight. Things take a turn for the worst when both the men and the python fall into the river below. A brief scuffle ensues, with the men wildly splashing around in the water as they try to get the creature under control. Ultimately, the men emerge victorious and proudly pose with the defeated python. It's unclear what happened to the animal after this video was recorded, but we like to think it was safely relocated to a river a little farther removed from civilization.
Man, that's a dirty job. I'm glad I ain't got. Hey, man, thank you to those who take care of the snake problems that are going on and playing our planet, bro. Thank y'all. I just want to say thank y'all. Because if it was up to me, y'all be in trouble. Because I ain't touching them. No way. No way.
tar swamp. La Brea is a small town located in the southwest of Trinidad. With a modest population of about 18,000 people, the town appears completely unassuming at first glance and is hardly what most travelers imagine when they think of Trinidad. But even the slightest bit of research reveals La Brea to be one of Trinidad's most popular tourist destinations. This is because the town is home to be the largest natural asphalt deposit in the world. This sprawling tar pit stretches across a whopping 100 acres, providing more than enough room for asphalt mining without risking the depletion of its contents. Nobody is too sure just how deep the lake is, but recent studies suggest the tar goes down as far as 250 feet into the ground. The origin of the lake is equally mysterious. A local legend says that the lake was opened by God to punish the locals for eating a consecrated hummingbird, which contained the souls of their ancestors. The whole town of La Brea was subsequently sucked into the lake, and the tar pit remained open to remind preceding generations of the horrible fate they would face if they angered their God again. Gangs of electric eels. The electric eel is a solitary
Not gangs of electric eel. One is enough. You gotta deal with a whole gang of them.
animal in almost all aspects of its life. It swims, hunts, and eats alone and only connects with other electric eels to reproduce. Or at least, that's what we thought up until 2021. It was in January of that year that scientist Carlos David de Santana was stunned to observe a pack of electric eels hunting together in the basin of the Amazon River. According to Santana, the pack of eels circled a number of victims throughout their group hunting session, zapping each one with the devastating power of their combined electric shock. A lone electric eel is capable of producing about 600 volts of electricity, which is more than 10 times what's needed to kill a human. So you guys can only imagine the sheer destruction a whole gang of electric eels could cause. Santana estimated the united shock of the eels to be as strong as 8,600 volts, which is enough to turn the Amazon River into a bona fide hot tub. Given the long-held belief that electric eels were not sociable creatures, Santana knew that the scientific world would be unwilling to accept his terrifying discovery if he didn't have video evidence to back it up. That's why he made sure to capture the
That's a cheat code. You see how they just came through, shocked those little small little bait minnow fish or whatever that was, and then just come through and eat. That's a cheat code, man.
following footage. Here we see a gang of electric eels hunting together, just as Santana described in his initial report. As the eels release their cataclysmic electric shock, fish can be seen shooting upwards from the river, writhing in agony before lifelessly falling back down into the water. It's truly shocking footage, and we're not just saying that just because we can with that pun. Junk Car Creek. In the first half of the 20th century, many Midwestern American towns and cities were struggling to combat the problem of erosion caused by their local rivers. The powerful waters would often wear away soil, causing whole chunks of land to fall into the water and devastating the nation's farmers, many of whom were already in dire financial straits. With the government offering no real solution, locals banded together to find one for themselves. What they came up with is today known as Detroit riprap. Detroit riprap was a creative method of erosion control. Some might argue it was even an early precursor to modern-day recycling, as it's found a use for discarded cars. These cars were generally manufactured in the Motor City, which gave the practice its name. Once they were no longer usable as vehicles, they would be stripped of their engines and other vital parts and hauled down to the offending river. There, the cars would be firmly fixed to the bank where they could protect the delicate soil beneath them from the corrosive powers of the water. While Detroit riprap was certainly effective in preventing erosion, it also caused significant pollution, which is why it was largely abandoned after only a couple of decades. Today, however, remnants of scrapped cars can be found on river embankments across the American Midwest. This video, shot by a TikTok user who seems to have been unaware of the practice, shows a long-forgotten car, still sitting perfectly in place on the side of a river. Its services may no longer be needed, but this dedicated piece of Detroit riprap refuses to give in to the river or Father Time. Shaky Bamboo Bridge. The month of May marks the beginning of the wet season in Cambodia.
I ain't driving across that. Y'all saw that? No way. I don't care how sturdy you tell me that is. Nah. No way, nah. And I know bamboo, strong, super strong, one of the strongest thing out there. But that, no, thank you. Nah.
The month of May marks the beginning.
Look how it's moving. Look how it's moving. Look at the tires. Watch the tires. And watch how it's moving up under the tires.
Shaky Bamboo Bridge. The month of May marks the beginning of the wet season in Cambodia. This lasts for about 6 months, only coming to an end in early November. During the wet season, the Mekong River rises and causes severe flooding. This has a profoundly negative impact on the 2 nearby towns. When November sets in and the dry season begins, residents here immediately get to work on a 3,300-foot bamboo bridge to connect the 2 locations. Dozens of workers construct this bridge by hand every year and use more than 50,000 bamboo sticks to do so. While video of the bridge show it to shake and rattle under the weight of even a single pedestrian, it's stable enough to support groups, bicycles, and even motorbikes. This shaky bamboo bridge remains in place throughout the dry season, during which time it attracts thousands of tourists who want to experience the thrill of crossing it for themselves. These tourists are equally interested in seeing the dismantling of the bridge, which happens every April.
That'll be one of the most nerve-wracking bridge crossings you have ever tried to attempt. That thing will have your heart going. Every time you driving and things are under you is just shaking. Man, your heart ain't gonna be able to take it. Nope.
Before the wet season kicks in. Risking the unthinkable at the hands of an early and unexpected flood, dozens of locals made into the water once again to deconstruct the bridge. The bridge's 50,000 plus bamboo sticks are then placed into storage, where they'll remain until the next dry season rolls around, at which point the entire process begins again. Beast crossing. As we learned in our previous entry, us humans usually need the help of a bridge to cross a large body of water without a boat. But that isn't the case for every creature that lives on land. Throughout the summer, herds of wildebeest throw themselves into the Mara River, which lies between Kenya and Tanzania. As this footage shows, the animals gallop through the water with the urgency of a motorboat, hoping to find better food and water on the other side. Each herd is composed of about 1.5 million wildebeest and occasionally includes other animals such as zebras and gazelles. For all of these animals, the Mara River crossing marks the end of a year-long migration that will begin all over again on the other side of the water. That is, of course, providing they manage to make it that far. Every year, countless wildebeest perish in the perilous waters of the Mara River. Many of these unfortunate creatures drown, while many more fall victim to the crocodiles and other terrifying creatures that lurk just below the water. Each herd of wildebeest emerges from the Mara River with much lower numbers than it went in with. Thankfully, the birthing season usually takes place in January, quickly replenishing the population and ensuring the survival of the species.
I remember watching a video on that, man. It wasn't too long ago either, bro. It's like the crocs just sit there and wait on their dinner, quote unquote dinner, to come to them. That's exactly what they do. And the wildebeest still go in the water knowing they're there. It's crazy.
Secret swamp base. Deep in the swamps of South Florida sits the subtropical wetland known as the Everglades. Covering more than 1.5 million acres, the Everglades is home to a wide variety of wildlife, including alligators, snakes, peacocks, and eagles. If you're particularly unlucky, you might even run into one of the panthers that call the area home. Despite the many threatening creatures that make their home in the Everglades, humans have been establishing communities in the area for centuries. In fact, evidence suggests that Native Americans were living in the Everglades as far back as 15,000 years ago. Today, humans are a rarity in the Everglades, aside from a few curious adventurers. However, the secret bases erected by the region's past inhabitants remain standing. Footage of these camps offers a fascinating insight into life in the wetlands of Florida. This footage can also be deeply unsettling as it forces us to imagine the total isolation endured by the Everglades' human inhabitants, who often went weeks at a time without encountering another soul. Swamp gas. The swamps of the United States are notorious for their high concentration of alligators, which is more than enough reason for the average person to stay away from them. However, not all of the swamp's terrifying threats come in the form of a ferocious predator. Even when sitting in a boat, Safe from the wrath of even the most vicious of alligators, swamp explorers must beware of the dreaded swamp gas. Swamp gas is created when the natural methane of the marsh collides with other chemical compounds that organically occur in the swamp. This primarily includes carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. The resulting gas is a highly flammable substance, as is evidenced by this baffling piece of footage. Here we see a seasoned chemist and swamp explorer standing in the waters of a swamp, putting himself at risk of a devastating alligator attack, all in the name of science and YouTube subscribers. Showcasing the power of marsh gas, he takes a common Tupperware dish topped with a piece of plastic tubing and places it in the water. After giving his homemade lab equipment a few minutes to collect the methane, he holds a lighter over the plastic tube, causing the gas to ignite in a spectacular display of the scientific magic of the swamp. Alligator fish. The Atractostea spatula is one of the largest freshwater fish in the world, with adult males of the species reaching up to 6 feet in length and often exceeding 100 pounds in weight. And these are just the dimensions that have been formally documented. Many fishermen and swamp explorers have reported encountering specimens that were more than 10 feet long and heavier than 350 pounds. But it isn't just its massive size that make them so unique. It can also be identified by its long snout and powerful mouth of 80 razor-sharp teeth.
So that's what made me think it was an alligator. Looking at it upside down from like neck up.
Intimidating features have led to this fish being christened the alligator gar, a nickname that's so widespread that many people are unaware of its official name. Just like its reptilian namesake, the alligator gar can be found in the swamps of North America. Trophy fishermen often seek out this gargantuan beast, but as the anglers who recorded this video learned the hard way, catching one is a lot easier said than done. Here we see a fully grown alligator gar latching onto the fisherman's bait and attacking it with its mighty jaws. Despite the uploader's best efforts to reel it in, the fish manages to cut the fishing line and break free, taking the bait back to its home in the waters of the swamp. Infected chimps. Towards the end of the 20th century, New York scientist Betsy Brotman established a laboratory deep in the Liberian jungle, where she could perform experiments on chimpanzees without the threat of the American government or animal rights organizations meddling in her business. While tests on animals is certainly a sinister practice and one that Brotman herself has since disavowed, her experiments were motivated by nothing but good intentions. By intentionally infecting her grade 8 test subjects with hepatitis and other blood diseases, she hoped she could find a cure for the conditions in humans. Once one of Brotman's chimpanzees tested positive for one of these diseases, it became a threat to her and fellow researchers, which is why each infected chimp was transported to a nearby island, where it could live out the rest of its days. Criticism of Brotman's work eventually reached a fever pitch, and she was eventually forced to cease her research. In the wake of her lab's closure, all of her remaining chimpanzees were relocated to the surrounding islands, where they were reunited with the other infected animals Brotman had tested on. To this day, the infected chimps live on those islands. Their upkeep is paid for by the Humane Society, which donates a staggering $30,000 per month to the primates. Many of these chimps were born after Brotman concluded her research and so carry no trauma from the testing, but others tragically still have the mental and physical scars from the terrifying experiments they endured.
Man, that's sad, bro. That's sad. That's one of the negative effects of scientific research right there.
Sinking mansion. At first glance, this sinking mansion in France looks like it was somebody's home before being swept during some possibly powerful flood. In reality, however, what you're looking at is a piece of art created by French artist Jean-Luc Kercotte as part of an art exhibition in 2007. The gigantic structure created by Kercotte is actually a replica of a nearby hotel that's, thankfully, still very much above water. Ironically, the sculpture has actually suffered some water damage, despite the fact that it was designed to permanently sit in the river. In 2012, just a few short years after the piece was unveiled, it was swept up from its original location in the river by a powerful current. With no foundation to hold it in place, the massive artwork sank to the bottom of the river and had to be retrieved by a specially trained crew. It was then moved to a calmer portion of the river, where it remains to this day. While this sinking mansion isn't the result of an actual natural disaster, it's a terrifying reminder of the fate that awaits all of humanity's buildings if we don't start making major moves to combat climate change. In a matter of decades, this replica inn may be joined in the river by the real thing. Okay, that ends this second look at the 15 most terrifying things found in rivers and swamps. Which of these discoveries did you find the most unsettling and why?
That was an expensive mistake that train operator, conductor, or whatever you want to call him, was that he committed, bro. That was an expensive mistake. You know what I mean? Listen, moral of the story, stay out the rivers and the swamps if you don't know what you're doing, bro. It's a million ways this thing could take you out of here, whether it be a python, you ain't see it in a tree, you sneaky, smart alligator somewhere. Like, man, if you don't know what you're doing, stay out in rivers and swamps. That's all I'm gonna say. Said my piece, all right? So y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you think and stick around and stay tuned. Till next one, I'm gone. Peace!